So we've got 3 days, 4 hours, and 59 minutes until Election Day officially begins. And tonight we've got two presidents in the middle of it all, battling it out in a blitz to win voter support. On the left side of your screen, that's where in moments we are going to see President Obama in Georgia. He is campaigning for gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams. This is a very hot race, one we're watching very closely. That's going to happen in a moment. Then on the right-hand side of your screen, another huge race, this one in Indianapolis, as President Trump makes stop number 2 of the day in Indianapolis. He's going to be there in the Senator Joe Donnelly, Mike Braun race. He's on the Braun side, of course. He was the Republican there, and he was in, as I said, West Virginia earlier this morning. So good evening, everybody. I'm MarthaMacCallum, live in Washington, D.C. tonight. Just a short time ago, the president said something very interesting. He acknowledged the possibility that his party could lose the House.
The Democrats, and it could happen, We're doing very well, and we're doing really well in the Senate, but could happen. And you know what you do? My whole life. You know what I say? Don't worry about it. I'll just figure it out.
That's an unsurprising comment, right? That sounds like the way that President Trump goes through a lot of life. And this, of course, is the scene from the caravan. We also know today, and we're going to get to this in a moment, very strong economy, which should really, in many people's minds, be the main story here. But the battle over this caravan and the bruising rhetoric that surrounds it is cutting both ways with voters, as some members of the caravan have now found attorneys in the United States to help them sue the White House for entry to America. Geraldo Rivera on that in just a moment, plus Howie Kurtz with his analysis of brand new polls that show who the American people actually blame for stoking the flames in all of this. But first, Trace Gallagher has the story from our West Coast newsroom tonight. Hi, Trace.
Hi, Martha. The class action lawsuit was filed in federal court against President Trump, the Department of Justice, and the Department of Homeland Security. It was filed on behalf of 6 Honduran migrants and their children, who are part of the caravan now making its way toward the U.S. border. The lawsuit is asking the court to declare the president's policies unconstitutional. The president says he will send up to 15,000 U.S. troops to the border, several hundred of which are already on the ground. And Mr. Trump says undocumented migrants would be held at the border, many in tent cities. Here's how the president explained it to Laura Ingraham. Watch.
We're going to put tents up all over the place. We're not going to build structures and spend all of this, hundreds of millions of dollars. We're going to have tents. They're going to be very nice, and they're going to wait. And if they don't get asylum, they get out.
The president also says that asylum seekers would be blocked from claiming asylum if they're caught crossing the border anywhere except legal points of entry. Current law says asylum seekers can make a claim anywhere in the United States. Immigrants' rights activists argue that holding migrants in tent cities violates the Flores Act, which dictates how long and in what conditions the federal government can detain children. This summer, a federal judge rejected an administration request to modify the Flores Act. Those who filed the lawsuit also claim the president's actions are nothing but a racist political ploy. But the president is not backing down. In fact, it appears he's doubling down. At a rally this afternoon in West Virginia, Mr. Trump said he won't have caravan after caravan of unvetted illegal immigrants flooding into the U.S. The president said Republicans want strong borders, no drugs, no gangs, no caravans. Martha.
Trace, thank you very much. Here now, Geraldo Rivera, Fox News correspondent at large, who's been obviously following this story throughout. Geraldo, good to see you tonight. Your thoughts on the legal side of this and the case that is being made, suing, members of the caravan suing the United States for entry and for the possibility of asylum.
First, Martha, let me just tell you where I am. I'm at the University of Arizona, my alma mater. I'm 60 miles from the Mexican border here, in a state where there is an absolute heated, contentious race, a battle for Jeff Flake's soon-to-be vacant Senate seat. You've got two candidates who are fighting. Both of them are pro, strict border enforcement. But 1/3 of Arizona's population is Latino. So it's the 4th largest Latino population anywhere in the country. Davis-Monthan, the big air base just 5 miles from where I'm sitting right now, is one of the military bases that will be used, one of the 14 frontier bases that will be used for President Trump's deployment of the troops. As I understand, now to your specific question, Martha, as I understand the lawsuit, what the filers are worried about, what they are suing the government for, is to ensure that that caravan, when it reaches the border, that those people are, if they appear as the president has required them, at a legal port of entry. Right. The lawyers want to make sure that those migrants are allowed, if they so choose, to request asylum. What happens when they request asylum? Then the due process of the United States comes into play, and they are required to be given a hearing before an immigration judge. What I would like, and I'll sum this up in a hurry, what I would like is, rather than the president sending troops to the border, which I think President Obama did it, George W. Bush did it, to no effect, meaningful effect, what I would like to see is a mobilization of immigration judges to make sure that those people, once they request asylum, are given a speedy hearing, not the 6 to 8 month wait that the president has complained about, but something measured rather in days, Martha.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think that you're right about that, and I think they're going to need an army of immigration attorneys because of the Flores rule. They're going to have a small window to process these people in because, as the president said, they're not going to release them. They will catch them, and then they will hold them, and if they have legitimate asylum claims, which we know a very small percentage of the group generally has once they go through the process, that's, in my mind, the White House's biggest jam right now, because they've got a time clock that will tick on that as soon as it begins. How do you think they're going to handle that?
Well, I think, first of all, the people coming up in the migrant caravan, generally speaking, are impoverished people, ordinary people who want a better life for their families. They're not an army of MS-13 coming. We've all seen the video.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they can get asylum. What you just described is not eligible for asylum.
You're absolutely right. Poverty is not a substantive reason for asylum. If so, as the president said, there are 1 billion, 2 billion poor people on earth under the poverty test. They would all be qualified for asylum. That's not the case. They've got to be, for instance, the gangs killed my husband and they forced my daughter into prostitution. We had to get, there are legitimate reasons coming from this hotbed of insecurity in Latin America. But the main thing here, coming back to this race between MarthaMacCallum and Kristen Sinema, two very highly regarded congresspeople, both vying for Jeff Flake's open seat. They are both kind of tough on immigration, but the notion of using the military, I think, is something that gives people pause, and I do believe that that's why President Trump, in this last, rally, bonanza weekend before the election, rally bonanza across the country, he is not coming here to Arizona, where ordinarily you would expect him to come. I think even the president is afraid that here he could tip this delicate balance now between the Democrat and the Republican, separated by less than half a percentage point, Martha.
I think he's trying to build essentially a human wall with the military, and that's his symbolic way of saying to Congress, either you give me the wall and we fund the wall, or I'm going to have a wall created by United States military, because we all know that the places where people sneak in are between the areas that the Border Patrol is able to cover. So he's trying to block those gaps, and it's going to be fascinating.
I don't think they can be used. I don't think they can be used. The military can be used in that fashion. I think the military can, if they want to take water to the Border Patrol, they could provide a vehicle for the Border Patrol.
But if they're standing there, they're going to be standing there. And we'll see how it goes.
It's the message they're sending.
That's exactly right.
That's the most important thing in Arizona, the message.
Geraldo, thank you. Always good to see you. Thanks for being here tonight from your alma mater, University of Arizona. So the fight has animated the worst in both sides, but a new poll shows that Americans put the blame just as much on the press for stoking the flames. Watch this.
This is a very big night for the President of the United States. He is all in on fear and loathing.
President Trump is ratcheting up his anti-immigration rhetoric and using the White House podium to stoke fears and rally Republican voters.
Stoking fear, anger, and anxiety, President Trump is going to new extremes to rile up white voters in red state America.
You get the idea. And President Trump hitting back at the media today in another round of blame pointing. Watch this.
You're creating violence by your questions. You know, you are creating you. And also, a lot of the reporters are creating violence by not writing the truth. The fake news is creating violence.
Here now with the polls and the analysis, Howie Kurtz, the host of Media Buzz. Howie, good to see you tonight.
Hi, Martha.
What do you make of what the president, he was pointing fingers. What do you think about all that?
Well, he was asked a question about a Washington Post ABC poll out today, which has a stunning finding, which is roughly half the country, 49%, blames President Trump, and roughly half the country, 47%, blames the news media for encouraging politically motivated violence. But the question from the ABC reporter was only about the blame Trump part. So he was punching back, and so now we have this sort of spectacle of each side blaming the other. I tend to blame the perpetrators in these situations. But the media very rarely, except with this poll, pause to consider their own role in spreading divisiveness. As you saw in those clips from other networks, it's all the president is fear-mongering, the president is race-baiting, the president is tearing this country apart. A lot of people out there think we are complicit as well.
Yeah, and you know, some of the references that we played in that montage are to immigration. They're about immigration, but the issue here is about illegal immigration. And I think that people do respond to that. You know, they say, wait a minute, no, that's not what we're talking about. And they can feel that they're sometimes being kind of bulldozed into thinking of it in those terms. And I think they do react negatively to that at times.
The press has absolutely been pounding the president as the major midterm theme. He is using immigration to rile up his base and all of that. And they come out and say, some commentators, some journalists, race baiting and it's inflammatory and all of that. But the way in which it's covered is also divisive. And what the message that the press is sending by putting all of the onus on President Trump is that millions of Americans think they don't care very much about the very real problems created by illegal immigration. They just want to use it as a battering ram against the president. At the same time, the president's rhetoric has gotten pretty hot, sometimes uncomfortably
Absolutely. hot. I want to switch gears for a moment and ask you, Senator Chuck Grassley, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, is now investigating 2 false claims about Judge Kavanaugh during that whole, brouhaha. And we remember that at the time, there were a lot of Democratic senators who were saying, there's all these other claims. We're getting other phone calls that are coming in. Until we investigate every one of these, this is not a legitimate vote that we're taking. Let me put up one of the sort of findings of this investigation that was released today. This is a woman named Miss Monroe Layton, who claimed to be the author of an anonymous allegation regarding Justice Kavanaugh, originally sent to Senator Harris. When questioned by the committee investigators, she admitted that she had fabricated the claim, and she confessed to the committee investigators that she just wanted to get attention, it was a tactic, and that it was just a ploy.
This is a really serious matter. And I remember when there was the white-hot debate over Christine Blasey Ford versus Brett Kavanaugh, and a lot of people took Christine Blasey Ford's allegations seriously, although they were never corroborated. But then when some of these other women jumped in, including Julie Swetnick, who was the subject of the first referral from Senator Grassley, I think it muddied the waters because their claims were outlandish, didn't have any backup whatsoever. And now we have this second woman who had been anonymous saying, yeah, I made it up, which sort of plays into what the critics of the people who are going after Judge Kavanaugh were saying, which is you can't necessarily believe anybody who comes out of the woodwork without
you had reporters
evidence.
like Jane Mayer, publishing stories that were not corroborated based on the same sorts of situations.
Julie Swetnick ended up backing off in an NBC interview. She said he spiked the punch. No, I didn't see it. She claimed that she witnessed all these gang rape parties. It simply wasn't credible. I don't know what will happen of the referral to the Justice Department, but it does show you that in that overheated atmosphere, media in particular and the public and the politicians have to be very, very careful about these explosive claims if there's no corroborating evidence.
He's pursuing it, and it's important, obviously, to stick to the facts. Howie, thank you very much.
Good to see you here in Washington.
So in Florida, 2 candidates try to win over Miami voters, where the district is increasingly purple. You've got wealthy neighborhoods. You have many Cuban Americans there. You have a lot of folks who fled New York and New Jersey for the Sunshine State. So it's a real interesting mix of Florida voters, and it is making for quite a race between Maria Salazar and Donna Shalala. That's coming up next.
Hundreds of thousands of children born to illegal immigrants are made automatic citizens of the United States every year because of this crazy, lunatic policy that we can end,
President Trump hammering home his opposition to birthright citizenship heading into Tuesday's elections, and it is front and center in Florida's hotly contested 27th district. Democrat Donna Shalala is up 7 points over Republican Maria Salazar in the latest New York Times poll, but only a few days earlier, Salazar led Shalala by 2 points in a Mason-Dixon poll. So in this heavily Hispanic district, Salazar initially went after the president in this tweet, saying this: President Trump, our Constitution is sacred. Birthright citizenship is protected, and you cannot change that by executive order. But now says that the 14th Amendment should, quote, be reviewed. Here to tell us about that, House Republican candidate Maria Salazar. Good to have you with us this evening. I should mention that we have also reached out to your opponent, and we are hopeful that she will join us on Monday evening. But you heard the president. He said this is a crazy, lunatic law when he refers to the 14th Amendment. Do you agree with him?
Well, what I agree is that we need to look for an immigration reform law. And that is one of my signature plank, because look what you were talking about in the previous segment. Look at the caravan that is arriving. What are we going to do? We need to, and I have called for an immigration reform law, but not only that, for a summit meeting where President Trump can really show his leadership, where he should call for a summit meeting between the presidents of Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, and help them keep their boys home. That is the only way, Martha, that is going to prevent another caravan from occurring. Because as you were saying before, the Honduras is one of the most explosive countries in the hemisphere. It has one of the highest murder rates in the world. So what do you think those people are going to do? And I'm not saying that we need to allow them in. I'm not saying that we cannot protect or we should not protect our borders. What I'm saying is that we need to find a solution. And since I am from Miami and we have hundreds of thousands of undocumented aliens in my town, and I know them very well, I know what the solution is. At one point, I was the Central American bureau chief for Univision. I lived in Guatemala, I lived in El Salvador, in Nicaragua, and in Honduras. And I know what they need. And I saw President Reagan showing leadership in helping those people, in helping the governments to keep their boys home.
Yeah, understood. You know, when you look at your district, though, and you know, I mean, people have been trying to do what you're suggesting and come up with comprehensive immigration reform for decades. And I think it's one of the greatest frustrations that the American people have, because both sides just like using it against each other too much in elections, essentially, to get anything done. But talk to me really quickly about your district. I only have about a minute left, because it was a Republican district. A lot of Cuban Americans live there. However, it also has, you know, a lot of, you know, Northeasterners who've moved to that area. So what do you think is the most important thing for them? What are they going to use to decide between the two of you?
Well, the fact here is that I was born, raised, and I have worked on television in this town for 35 years. And that's why I'm sure the voters are going to prefer me over my opponent, because Mrs. Shalala does not belong to the melting pot. See, Miami is the ultimate melting pot in the United States. And you need to be part of that social fiber. You need to be part of the ultimate melting pot in order to be able to represent them in the House of Representatives. I mean, the name says it, the House of Representatives. And in reality, I am the person that could represent them the best, because not only I speak the language, but they get me and I get them. You cannot come from outside and just want to review the representative for Miami.
We're going to be watching it very closely on Tuesday night as all these returns come in. Thank you very much, Maria. Good to see you again. Maria Salazar joining us from Florida tonight. So a big win for the White House. With less than 4 days to go until the midterms, you got these brand new jobs numbers that show a very healthy economy as America heads to the polls.
More Americans today, right now, this hour, are working than ever before in the history of our country. How good is that?
So while there is a lot to argue about out there, it's pretty tough for either side to not like the economic numbers that came out today. Today's announcement included soaring jobs numbers, up 250,000 jobs in October. Unemployment at 3.7, haven't been there since 1969. And wages for workers rising 3.1%. That's a big part of that number. That's a 9-year high. So here now, economist Art Laffer, who served on President Ronald Reagan's Economic Policy Advisory Board and did a pretty good job there. And then later, as an economic advisor to President Trump's 2016 campaign. New book, Trumponomics, is out now. Art, good to see you tonight.
Good to see you, Martha.
You know, obviously those numbers look really good. Are you surprised this isn't more of a focus of the midterm discussions?
Not really. I mean, I think people are well aware of the economics. It may not be the active conversation you want to have, but I think they're very well aware. It's just amazing. And the changes in tax policy, Martha, have been incredible. I mean, the tax bill was amazing. He got it through. It's just the foundation of his policies. And if you look at the deregulation, I mean, amazing here as well. If you look at the monetary policy with Powell, I mean, he's doing a great job on that. And the trade
then why
stuff
does the president keep yelling at him, Art? Because the president, you know, keeps saying that he doesn't like the suggestion that he's going to continue to raise interest rates, and the market was down a little bit today. I mean, that's what some market prognosticators are saying, as you well know, that we've had the high in this GDP. What do you say?
Well, can't explain all of Donald Trump's conversations, to be honest with you, who he yells at and who he doesn't. So forgive me.
We need a longer show.
Yeah, we need a longer show, but Powell's doing a good job, and Trump is doing a great job on trade. I mean, it's work in progress right now, but Xi and he are going to meet in Argentina, and there's a very good chance we get good trade deals with China, and we need China badly, because without China, Martha, there is no Walmart, and without Walmart, there is no middle class or lower class prosperity. The U.S. needs China, and China, for goodness sakes, really needs us, and I think we're moving along on that very well. And then look at our GDP numbers growth. I mean, those are pretty astoundingly good numbers.
Let's put the GDP number up, guys.
Yeah, it's just a great. You got it. I don't know if you've.
Yeah, we have it up. So, you know, obviously, very strong growth in the last 2 quarters in particular. What's your outlook for the next 2?
Well, I hope it continues. I mean, we need about 4 or 5 years of this.
We all hope it continues, but you're the economist, so what do you think it's going to do?
I think it's going to continue. How's that? I think we're going to have a very good prosperity for the next 6 or 7 years. I think it's very much like the Reagan period, like the Kennedy period, and like the Clinton period, not Hillary, Bill. I think we're going to have a very strong economic growth for the next 5 or 6 years, and we'll get back to the types of prosperity we really need and want. And I think he's doing a great job on the economy, and I'm an economist. I can't tell you about everything else, but on the economy, he's as good as I've ever seen in the first term, and he's not even halfway through it yet.
All right, so in the 30 seconds I have left, what would be your one thing you would say to him, but don't do this, you know, because that would be problematic?
Don't raise taxes. Don't increase regulations. But the thing I hope he does do is where we haven't succeeded, which is government spending. We need to get control of government spending, entitlement programs, government spending, and I think that's what he's going to do in his next 6 years. All
right. And so, Art, thank you very much.
Thank you, Martha. This is great. I love your show, by the way. I think it's really great.
Thank you. You can come back anytime.
Anytime you want me, I'm here.
It's always good to see you. It's going to be very interesting to watch where this economy goes. It's definitely not the top of mind topic, but as you say, people feel it in what they're doing every day. And we'll see what happens when they walk into those voting booths. All right, thank you very much,
Art
Laffer, joining us tonight. So coming up this evening, what an interesting story Missouri is. Watching this race, Claire McCaskill going after a fellow Democrat for what she said about President Trump. And she is not alone as Democrats fight to win in red states. They have some very surprising messages out there. Former DNC chairwoman Donna Brazile is here with a message for them tonight on The Story when we come back. So some red state Democrats, if you listen closely, sound a bit like Trump supporters in this election. Among them, at-risk Indiana Senator Joe Donnelly, with this warning on the campaign trail.
The radical left wants to eliminate ICE.
I support ICE in funding President Trump's border wall.
There you go. So West Virginia's Joe Manchin split with his party, voting yes on Bret Kavanaugh, while Montana's John Tester tells The Hill that Democrats botched the debate on the newest Supreme Court justice. Chris Darwalt, Fox News politics editor, joins us. What are you doing in New York? I came all the way here to Washington to see you.
I must owe you money. I'm hiding out. I knew you were coming to town, so I'm laying low up here.
Good move, my man. Good move. All right. So, you know, I mean, obviously they're running in red states, but, you know, there's all this sort of idea that there's so many progressive candidates out there. But that is certainly not what these folks think is going to win the day for them, Chris.
Well, look, I should start out and say I think that these people are sincere, right? I think that they're not saying things that they don't mean. But I do think this. Democrats, by and large, took the wrong lessons from Barack Obama's election, and it was that they didn't need white working-class voters anymore, right? When, in fact, Barack Obama did really well with white working-class voters. There are millions of Americans who voted both for Barack Obama and Donald Trump. There is a culturally conservative, fiscally liberal streak that runs through a huge chunk of this electorate in states like these. This is the old New Deal Democratic coalition. These are their grandchildren. And on issues like immigration and others, they're not liberal. They're actually quite conservative. And Democrats are coming around to, having seen the Electoral College consequences in 2016 and now looking at the Senate map in 2018, some Democrats are understanding they need these culturally conservative voters and they can't do it without them.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because the message, you know, certainly in the presidential candidates that seem to be lining up for 2020 is completely the opposite of that. So, you know, when we see the results on Tuesday night, it's going to send a very big message, I would think, one way or the other, to those future candidates. Won't it, Chris?
Well, it should, but it won't. It should. If they were smart, they would pay attention to what got results and how to win. Democrats have to have back the upper Midwest. They have to have that back if they want to be competitive. They've got to rebuild the blue wall, and they can't just leave these voters fallow. Now, they're expecting a good night on Tuesday, but it isn't whether they win or not. It's the lesson that they take from the victories that they do obtain. And if they say, oh, we're fine, we don't need to change anything, they're not paying attention.
All right, I want to take a look at the Arizona race and an interesting back and forth. Obviously, this is a very tight race. Kristen Sinema and MarthaMacCallum. Listen to this exchange.
You know, in Arizona, it's not new for us to have military deployment to the border to provide a support role for our Customs and Border Patrol agents who are down there. So we wish them well and tell them to stay hydrated.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. Wow. Well, my message to them is thank you for your service and your sacrifice.
I mean, this is in many ways sort of the essence of the difference between these two candidates, Chris.
Well, yes, but. And I think the but here is Sinema's an effective campaigner, and she has demonstrated that she has turned around substantially on these issues. Look, this is somebody who was an anti-war protester during the Iraq War. She was very left. But as she has represented a swing suburban district outside of Phoenix, what she's figured out is that doesn't play in Arizona. That's not what lines up with Arizona voters. So she has recalibrated. And she's doing the same smart thing that Claire McCaskill did in Missouri, which is if Trump is trolling you on sending a bajillion troops to the border, you don't have to take the bait. You're not obliged to oppose him. You can say, yep, cool, border security is good, it's fine, and take the issue away from Republicans. And that's what smart Democrats do. They don't squeal.
And remind them to bring their water when they go to the border.
It's very dry out there. It's very dry.
Chris, thank you so much. We'll be spending a lot of time together over the next few days. Look forward to it.
See you soon.
So why is Nancy Pelosi taking heat from Michael Moore for saying that her party is going to win and that she will be back? Former Democratic National Committee Chair Donna Brazile joins me next.
A Democrat who just automatically announced we're going to win. And it's like, my God, that's what happened in 2016.
Up until today, I would have said if the election were held today, we would win.
What happened today that changed that?
What now I'm saying is we will win.
Nancy Pelosi saying we will win, her bold assertion about winning back the House, not sitting well with outspoken activist filmmaker Michael Moore, who is worried that she is getting ahead of herself. Watch this.
A Democrat who just automatically announced we're going to win. And it's like, my God, that's what happened in 2016. Everybody was throwing the party for Hillary before the election. Don't think for a second that come Tuesday, they don't have every intention of holding on to the House and the Senate. and they are good at what they do, and you should respect the fact that they are able to get away with this.
He's saying you got to fight until the very bitter end. Joining me now, Donna Brazile, former DNC chair and co-author of the new book for colored girls who have considered politics. Donna, good to have you with us.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Welcome to Washington, D.C.
Thank you. It's great to be here tonight. So which camp are you in? Are you the optimist like Nancy Pelosi, or the it's not over till it's over Michael Moore?
I'm in both camps. Look, I come from the school that you have to work until the polls are closed across the country. I also believe that Nancy Pelosi has a real good gut instinct about what's happening out there. Good quality candidates. She's been crisscrossing the country raising money. But at the same time, Michael Moore is so right. You have to keep knocking on doors. We know that during midterm elections, Democrats tend not to turn out. We are more infrequent voters. The Republicans treat every election like the World Series. Democrats like the World Cup.
I mean, we heard the opposite for so long in this campaign, that Democrats were super fired up and that they were trying to get Republicans more fired up. I want to play this interesting soundbite from Claire McCaskill, who's obviously in a neck-and-neck race with Josh Hawley in Missouri right now. Watch this.
The crazy Democrats are people who walk in restaurants and scream in elected officials' faces. The crazy Democrats we have a state senator here in Missouri that actually advocated for the assassination of President Trump. That's a crazy Democrat.
What do you think about that, Donna?
Well, there's a lot of people out there today that I would label as, let's just say, not civil. But the truth is that we have to tone it down. It's important that Democrats, Republicans, independents, that we find a way to tone down the rhetoric. It is hot out there. It is, as we call it in Louisiana, it's nasty hot. But at the same time, people are very passionate. They're passionate about health care. They're passionate about immigration. We need to allow people to speak their minds without confronting them. Look, I have Republican friends, I have Democratic friends, and I have friends who are independents. And yet, you know what I want to do at the end of the day? I want to have a good glass of wine. I want to watch football, drink beer.
That's the old way of Washington. It certainly doesn't feel like that anymore.
And by the way, are you wearing crimson red? Because, you know, I'm an LSU. You're not trying to send a signal here, because go Tigers, go Tigers. And you see, we could talk about football without getting into a fight. I'm trying to put on my best shade of purple.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, you know, speaking of, you know, how nasty it gets, as you say, this is Maria Chappelle-Nadal, who's a state senator. I mean, she went after Claire McCaskill. I mean, look at this tweet that she put out there. Claire McCaskill is desperate. She's a piece of you know what? Instead of knowing why people of color are angered by this administration, she chooses to put us and our families in harm's way. If my family is harmed, blame it on Claire McCaskill. She deserves to lose. She is not a Democrat. Your thoughts?
I don't know who this person is. I know who Claire McCaskill is.
She's the state senator that Claire McCaskill was referring to, who called for the assassination of President Trump, which, by the way, she said was a mistake.
I mean, look. Michelle Obama was attacked. Barack Obama was attacked. The First Lady has been attacked. Mrs. Trump, the president. Okay, cut it out. It's not what we do. These are people that we have elected to lead us, people that are serving as spouses. It is important that
Hillary Clinton called for no civility until after the election. Eric Holder said kick him in the knees. So you're against all that?
I am against what the President of the United States say every day when he tweets. I'm against any elected officials using their job that we hired them to do.
But you're saying I want to be friends with everybody. So are you also against Hillary Clinton calling for no civility and Eric Holder saying kick him in the knees?
You know, I don't want to sit here and name calling. What are we trying to prove by calling out Hillary and Eric? President Donald Trump.
I'm just saying be fair on all sides. When somebody's out of line, we'll call it on all sides.
I have been fair, but you know what my job is? My job as a citizen, because I'm no longer chair of the party, is to go out there and to build hope. It's to inspire the next generation to vote. I'm worried that we have a lot of millennials who have not yet decided to vote. This election impacts their future. That's what I'm worried about.
Oprah was certainly doing a good job getting out
what she did
in Georgia
yesterday. You know?
But I want to bring up this because the economy is doing so well. well.
Yes.
And Jared Bernstein, who was Joe Biden's former economic advisor, tweeting today pretty much everything you could want in a monthly jobs report. Payroll gains way up better than expected. Nice pop in labor force participation. Wage growth continues. Finally beating inflation. Yeah. So he's very positive on the economy. So, when you look at that, is that a difficult argument for Democrats to make in terms of, rolling back some of these tax cuts, rolling back some of the regulatory changes that have helped to create this economy?
The Democrats, what they've been saying, and I've looked at a lot of the ads, they want an economy that works for everyone, whether you're making $100,000 a year or you're...
This is what everybody's unemployment numbers are the lowest they've been in decades.
But, when Barack Obama was president, Republicans had a hard time saying good news. I like to say good news, good news. I wouldn't care if it's good news that come from a Democrat, a Republican, or independent. Good news. We want people to have jobs.
So you think President Trump's done a good job with the economy so far?
President Trump is not out there campaigning on the economy. He's campaigning as if people who are No,
but that's not my question. My question is, do you think the president has done a good job with the economy so far?
I think that overall the structure of our economy is good, and while the White House is claiming credit, just like Barack Obama claimed credit for turning the economy around, give credit where credit is due. We should not undermine people's confidence in their country or the economy simply because they have an R or a D behind their names. That's where I come down on
Donna
this.
Brazil,
I want everybody to have a job.
Good to see you
keep my job, by the way.
The book is for colored girls who've considered politics.
Martha.
Thanks for being here, Donna. Come back.
I will.
Great having you here.
Thank you.
So it has been a week of high-profile celebrity endorsements for candidates across the country, but does the average American care about celebrities and whether or not they will influence their vote? And it's Friday. It means it's time for our Ladies' Night panel. Here to weigh in, coming up next.
You get a vote, and you get a vote, and you get a vote. Everybody gets a vote.
This midterm election, exercising your right to vote is as important as ever.
We are very close to Election Day. I just want to make sure that everyone knows how important it is for you to get out and vote early.
Vote, vote, vote.
Vote!
I'm not going to do that. November 6th, please vote.
Vote. So those are just some of the celebrities that are pushing voters to get involved in this election, some of them even going door to door to spread their message. But can Americans really be persuaded by these celebrities showing up at your door? It's a question even Comedy Central is having a little bit of fun with.
How will I know that I should vote?
If celebrities don't tell me to.
Does Emma Stone think I should vote?
What about John Krasinski?
Have you guys seen A Quiet Place? Yes, but that isn't what this is about right now. It's about celebrities.
Telling regular Americans that they have to vote.
Many normal Americans like us don't know what we should do until celebrities tell us what to do.
Here now, Ladies' Night. Jenny Beth Martin, Bree Payton, and Marie Harf. Ladies, so has there ever been a celebrity, anybody like that, who sort of made you inspired to vote for someone?
Not for me personally to vote for someone, but I can't imagine that it might make an average voter. I would say not exactly average because I live, breathe, and sleep politics.
What do you think, Bree?
Yeah, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say hard pass. I think this is condescending, and I think that we have proof for this. Taylor Swift came out, endorsed a Democratic candidate for Senate, in Tennessee, and it hasn't moved the needle at all. His Republican opponent is up by something about 7 points, according to Real Clear Politics average. Blackburn's leading that race over there. So I think, this is supposed to, melt everything. This is supposed to be a game changer there, and it wasn't. So I think it does.
There's just something. I mean, first of all, if Will Ferrell showed up at my door, I would just laugh hysterically. And when he's giving that serious message about voting, I'm just thinking that somewhere in there he's kidding, actually, or because I just think he's hilarious. All politics aside. Yes. But Marie, Oprah Winfrey was very powerful the other day. Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see her having an impact on that race.
And we saw in actually 2008 Oprah endorsing Barack Obama and then campaigning during the primary, particularly in South Carolina, actually appears to have made a big difference in that primary. People love Oprah, and she doesn't get up there and talk about the Democratic Party. She talks about the candidate and certain principles. So I actually think that Oprah, in a race that's as close as it's going to be in Georgia, might make a difference. And look, in Tennessee, I think it's still an open question. Tens of thousands of new voters registered in the 48 hours after
Taylor but it was the last day to vote. I mean, it was the last day you could register, right, before she said it.
That was, sure, but we will see if she seems to have inspired a number of people to register. I think that a lot of these races races, Martha, are going to be so close that even if celebrities only move the needle a little bit could actually matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's going to be a lot of very tight races. I think we're going to see contested races.
Yeah.
I think a lot of races aren't going to be done on Tuesday night.
I agree.
Speaking of celebrities, Alec Baldwin got in trouble again in New York City. Now, I'm sort of sympathetic because if someone steals your parking spot in New York City, it's like, it's just, you can't do that. The president came out today. There he is. He always looks like he wants to punch somebody, right? I mean, pretty much always has that look on his face. But apparently he punched a guy over a parking spot. The president was asked about it today, and here's what he said.
Who was arrested? Alec Baldwin. He punched somebody out during a parking dispute.
I wish him luck.
That's it.
And Alec Baldwin had this to say when asked to comment on what happened. He said, "My comment is that my show airs Sunday at 10 p.m. Jenny Beth, what do you think?
You know, it would be easy to be a little bit sympathetic. He's got 4 kids under the age of 5, and it's a parking space in New York. If he didn't have a history of this, but he has a history of punching people, photographers, insulting flight attendants.
Yeah, this could get ugly for him.
Spewing homophobic
He could be potentially facing
insults.
as much as a year in jail, apparently, Brie.
Yeah, I mean, this is a mess. Sadly, this is kind of a cycle for him. Whenever he catches a break, then he does something like this. I think the timing is also kind of interesting. Here he just has the show, you know, that launched, and then he's out here doing this. I mean, I'm just saying, I think it's interesting.
You think he's like, I think I'm going to go punch someone today because it'll be good publicity?
Not the punching. I just think that, you know, this tends to happen whenever he catches a big break. I don't know if it's like this self-destructive tendency that he tends to have where it's like, oh, now I'm doing well, gotta mess it up. I don't know.
I'm going to say I am a hugely competitive parker in Washington, D.C., which isn't as bad as New York, but I have never punched someone. But like you, Martha, I can sympathize with people getting very upset about a parking spot. It is awful.
Yeah, I have to cop to a tiny bit of road rage at
Me
times.
too.
I can't help it. When somebody like, goes towards my parking spot, I'm like, no. But haven't punched anybody so far. Thanks, ladies. Great to see you all tonight. That is our story on this Friday night. We'll see you again here on Monday, which is Election Eve. Have a great weekend, everybody. Tucker Carlson coming up live next from D.C.